presentation is a female duet, and while they're getting to us, we can think of all the famous female duets we've seen in our time. So we have the pleasure of Sue Ping Thang from Singapore, who you've met before, and Heather Jacene, and they will be telling us about the pitfalls that from an international experience.
Thank you, Stephen, and good afternoon, everyone. So this is a joint presentation with Heather from Boston. So I'll be sharing our Asian perspective on how to set up this service, and then Heather on her US perspective later on. So I'll talk a little bit on our journey, and then I'll share some tips and challenges along the way. So really the journey started here when I had the opportunity to spend a year-long fellowship at Peter Mac when they are still recruiting patients for their phase 2 prospective trial. So I'm forever grateful to the fantastic team at Peter Mac who have helped me learn tremendously on this treatment. So Michael and team subsequently published their promising results, which spearheaded 2 important trials and eventually led to the approval of PSMA 617 for PSMA-positive mCRPC. So how do we bring what we've learned back to home? I can only say that it takes the whole team. So fortunately for us, we have been offering PRRT, peptide receptor radionuclide therapy for neuroendocrine tumors since May 2012. So we already have a team including physicists, lab staff, nurses, as well as NMTs who are familiar with such similar treatment. So depending on local processes, in Singapore General Hospital, when we first offered this back in 2018, if we wanted to start a new treatment, and there's no phase 3 data yet, but is fairly widely adopted elsewhere, it kind of fall into this category of under the Office of Translational Medicine Oversight, where you have to show in a small pilot study that this treatment is effective for patients with acceptable side effects before we can roll this out as a clinical service. So now it's a clinical service. I mean, it's not as high volume as what Peter Mac has been offering, but as of last month, we have treated 200 over patients, 800 over cycles. So I think Ken Herman and team has put up this very nice guide. It was shown previously as well on how to set up a Theranostics center. They touch on many aspects. It's a very good reference. So again, fortunately for us, due to our experience in PRRT, the initial planning was smooth, but we needed to create space and manpower as we wanted to make lutetium PSMA an outpatient treatment. So PRRT was then an inpatient treatment, but we're slowly moving some of them to outpatient next month onwards as well. So at the moment, we're using one of our clinic rooms in the later half of the morning when the clinic is not so busy to treat patients. And due to space constraints, we can only treat 1 patient at a time. So in terms of manpower, we need to train a separate team of nurses to help us with this outpatient treatment. And as we start to treat patients and patients coming back for more cycles of treatment, we realize that treatment planning is essential. So currently we're using Google Calendar to help us schedule and deconflict treatments, and this is managed by both doctors and nurses. Clinical partners, extremely important. I think it was highlighted previously as well as nuclear medicine physicians. We're completely dependent on our medical oncologists, radiation oncologists, and urologists for referral. And some of these patients may develop medical complications following treatment as well, which require co-management from all specialties. So this is our outpatient setup. The patient is with us for a very short period of time. The infusion is around 10 minutes, but plus minus procedure as well as some monitoring. They can be with us for up to an hour. And this is our clinical partners. Some of our clinical partners, I'm very grateful that we do have a collegial relationship. And this is the Asia Pacific Consensus Conference last year in Singapore. So it is held usually a year after the main APCCC. So where different specialties come together to come up with consensus guidelines to manage patients. So again, highlight the importance of working together with other subspecialties. So since we started this treatment, we have groups from the region visiting us and learning from us, and we're going to have another group from Taiwan in 3 weeks' time. So we have also published some of our clinical results, which helps us understand our treatment better and give us more confidence when we talk to our clinicians as well as patients. So we try to start actinium PSMA as well, using the same criteria for lutetium PSMA, but the patient should be resistant to lutetium PSMA first. But unfortunately, this is severely affected by the global shortage of actinium and is currently still at its pilot stage. We're involved in some of the radiopharmaceutical trial as well, and one of them is PSMA addition, which gives us the opportunity to see how lutetium PSMA works in earlier stage patients. So just to sum it all, so some practical tips on establishing a Theranostics service. From our experience, we learn from others, so preferably learning from a high volume academic center. Have a good relationship with people you learn from. So I'm thankful to Michael, Grace, and the Peter Mac team as well, and they're still very willing to share their experience till today. So teamwork and collaborations, this is your own internal as well as external team to ensure that your treatment thrives. So show results. This will help you understand your own service better. It may also attract regional training and referral, and when you teach others, you learn further. And as of anything else, continue to keep up to date and continue to innovate if possible. So in terms of ongoing challenge, I think other than clinical challenges, the two most biggest challenges as we face in the Asia-Pacific region is cost and availability. So the treatment can be costly in many countries, and the access to treatment is not uniform. So some countries can only treat patients via industry-sponsored trial, and some countries faces a shortage of radio tracer. So in Singapore, we're very much affected by the high cost of treatment. So in fact, I think it is the main hindrance of patients' referral for this treatment. So for patients who are suitable for trial, we'll recruit them to trial so that their treatment can be paid by trial. So that's all from myself. So I'll now hand over to Heather to share her experience. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for inviting me. And I'll talk about our U.S. perspective. These are my disclosures. So actually very happy because I think maybe our practice is fairly similar to what you've been doing at Peter Mac, and I'll start off with the same kind of wheel that you have with the patient at the center. And really the patient touches almost every spoke of this wheel for nearly every treatment, and I divided it into 4 major areas. The first is the institution and the department. The second is nuclear medicine. And so the first thing that we had to really do in the U.S. was garner support and resources from our institution. You know, why is this important to offer this therapy and technology? What are the benefits of the risks? And we had to develop strong business plans. And it was a little bit different in the way we had to package our business plans. One was for a cancer center who wanted to bring this new cutting edge technology to the patients as quickly as possible. In the United States, most of nuclear medicine are divisions within the Department of Radiology. And so when you go and tell your department chair in radiology that you want to take 45 minutes to go and see a patient, which doesn't bill as high as me reading 3 PET scans, how you sell that is a little bit different, but equally important. There were some, I think we've seen some of the references that are out there in the guidance on how to set up a Theranostics clinic, so I didn't want to go through all of those, but some unique items for us in the United States. I think that bringing a new theranostic agent is not that dissimilar to bringing on a new diagnostic agent. It's not that dissimilar when a new chemotherapeutic agent is introduced into a cancer center, but you have to kind of take a little bit of pearls from each of them to get them into your clinic. But for a nursing standpoint, most of our nurses were used to accessing ports and giving IV contrast. They weren't used to longer infusions that you might get with amino acids for PRRT. They're not infusion nurses, so there was a lot of education around there. We needed to secure space both for consults and therapy administrations. We do most of this as outpatients in the United States, so we had to get support and funds to build that space out. Also to have inpatient rooms available to us as well. Ancillary medications, how do we order them? How did we administer them? What additional supplies did we need? And then because we were giving higher amounts of activity with more patients, how do we handle the radioactive waste, which really also increased, and how we were going to handle that. Next is medical oncology and how we interact. And I think the first thing that I learned was that we make these best practice and these guidelines, but a lot of what it comes down to is local standard and practice. The referral patterns are different, and what I was struggling with, somebody else was finding very easy in the United States. When you talk to colleagues, what I was finding easy, they were struggling with. And so you end up with some spectrum of local practice, but I think that's okay in a sense, as long as at the end of the day you are doing your best job taking care of the patients and you're providing safe, effective care. So the first thing that we really did was identify our team and meet to devise a plan. We wanted to understand the referring physician goals, their expectations, what their workflow was. We wanted to consider patient expectations. Our patients also come from afar, and having to come for 2 visits, they may not like that very much, or if they have to stay overnight for a post-treatment scan the next day, sometimes that's not going to work. So our plan was also different for different radiopharmaceutical therapies, depending on how our different cancer disease centers were operating. And we tried to use existing models when they were available, like radiation oncology. Interventional radiology was a good one for us, and our multidisciplinary clinics. I have let me go back. Let me see if I get this right. So we have a spreadsheet that's very busy that outlines every step that the patient goes through, starting up at the top at our tumor board, and several columns which is outlining what is nuclear medicine doing, what's the MD doing, the nurse practitioner, and medical oncology. But if I show this at our GU medical staff meeting, our oncologist, this would not go very well. So we try to streamline this such that all of our patients are also presented at weekly tumor boards. That's the entry point, or one email, and then they are referred to our Theranostics service line, and we take over. From there, we see the patients in clinic, and then as they move through the treatment course, our nuclear medicine and oncology coordinators work together for therapy appointments and their follow-ups. We also see the patients at mid-cycle for toxicity checks, and then before the next cycle. And so the last quadrant here is patient care and navigation, which includes our program coordinators and nurse practitioners. We have 2 of each, and also nursing. And if you asked me, besides the patient on this slide, what is the most important part of these quadrants, it's really our program coordinators and nurse practitioners, because I think, as we already heard, this is the one person who is coordinating everything. It's a one point of contact for the patient, so they feel like there is really a coordinated team who is taking care of us. Then that person, if there's a radiation safety question, they can direct it to us. If it's a medical oncology question about bloods and blood transfusions, then we're all communicating across the board. So what are some lessons that we learned? First was you need redundancy in the process. You can't rely on one person to do any one specific task. I can be here today because I have colleagues who are back in Boston who are seeing consults and treating patients. If you have only one technologist or one program coordinator who is ordering your radiopharmaceutical and they miss that particular email and the patient shows up and you don't have a dose, that's not going to go over very well. I think it's important sometimes to think of the worst case scenarios and try to prepare for them. If something unexpected happens, to examine the process, learn from it, and make changes. And a perfect example of that is, typically when we're injecting in nuclear medicine, it's a short IV push. We do have codes in nuclear medicine, but we did happen to have a code while a 30-minute infusion of lutetium PRRT was going. Our code team came down, unaware of the fact that radioactivity was being infused, disconnected the line without any gloves or knowing that there was radioactivity there, and you can imagine what happened from there. I'll just leave it at that, but I know how to do a root cause analysis, and as a result of that experience, now our nuclear medicine technologist is part of the co-team if it happens in nuclear medicine, and they stay in there to make sure that the rest of the team and the patient is safe. And we developed then from there plans for codes, plans if we have to send the patient to the ER directly after therapy, or how we do hospital handoffs if they're going from an outpatient and we need to prophylactically admit them for medical reasons. And the other place where we actually struggled was our electronic medical record. As I said before, most nuclear medicine is happening in a department of radiology. So we work in Epic. I saw Epic at the tumor board the other day was open. So we have Epic as well, and many places do. We live in radiology modules. So when we were trying to first schedule consults, we couldn't do that. We had to have workarounds where we were putting consults into our scanner schedules. And based on that, we thought we were billing for our consults, but it turned out we didn't actually have a department that was actually sending bills anywhere. So for about a year, we were not really billing for the consults until we got our imaging clinic in EMR developed, and that functions now as an ambulatory clinic. So we had to work with EMR teams to create new ambulatory clinic. And this was all new for a radiology department. We also, many places in the United States, the written directive is our regulatory requirement, like the prescription that you write for medicines or chemotherapy. A lot of that is still handwritten on paper, so you physically have to go there and sign the paper the morning of the treatment. Luckily, we were able to work with our radiation safety officer and our Epic team, so now we can order this just like chemotherapy is ordered electronically through the medical record, and that's made a big difference in efficiency, not only for the medical doctors, but also for the technologists who don't have to wait for us to show up to sign a piece of paper. It also, because of that, it also ends up in the medication administration record, just like a chemotherapeutic agent, so it's showing up as another line of therapy for the patient. So just to conclude, and I think that these are really very similar conclusions to all the other speakers this afternoon in this session, but we really want to have patient-centered, safe, effective therapy. It's really important to engage the colleagues, and for nuclear medicine's perspective to be present, you need solid nuclear medicine procedures and policies that consider both the nuclear medicine workflows, but also medical oncology and referring physician and patient workflows. And then it's important to adapt the practices and resources to the settings so that you can devise the plans that really work for your teams. Thank you very much.